Young Wolf Media.
Hi and welcome to Young Wolf Media. I hope everyone's well. And today's video is, could the Great Recession have been avoided? Now this is in many ways a sequel to my video Ireland's housing crisis. For those of you from other countries, don't worry, this video will be focusing on the wider economy across the world and not just on Ireland. Now first of all, Isaac Newton said, what goes up must come down. Now this is true even when it comes to economics. The recession is part of the economic cycle, and as a rule of thumb, a recession happens every 10 years. Now, a recession has benefits to the economy, such as it makes it more effective in the long term. A recession tends to get rid of the ineffective businesses, and new businesses will emerge and take their place. It's also good for falling asset prices, which makes it cheaper to buy, for example, a house, which is very good for first-time buyers. So look, a recession happens as part of the natural economic cycle. So in that way, a recession can't be stopped. However, and there is a big however to this, the Great Recession was not a natural recession in that it could have been avoided. And I'm going to explain how it could have been prevented in a few minutes. But first, I'm going to read you two quotes, and they're really going to summarise the situation. Those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Both the Great Depression in the 1930s and the Great Recession in the 2000s have a good few similarities. Both were during times of great periods of prosperity. Both came at times when banks were experimenting with new ways of doing business. In the 1930s, it was customer credit. And in the 2000s, the banks pooled mortgage debt together, also known as subprime loans. What's really interesting is Florida was a sign for both of these events, the Great Recession and the Great Depression. I only discovered this after reading a book called The Great Crash, which is just a book simply about how the Great Depression got started. And I was just it was eerie, the similarities between the Great Depression and the Great Recession. In the 1920s, Florida real estate market crashed, and in the 2000s, if you read the book, or even if you watch the film The Big Short, which is just a non-fiction book that shows how the Great Recession had started. In the book, the people go to Florida and they're able to discover the housing bubble and that it was about to crash after seeing people getting loans who simply shouldn't have gotten the loans, which are known as the subprime loans, which simply put are just bad loans that should have never been given. In other words, these events were caused by the risky behaviour of banks. During the panic of 1907, many US banks failed, including, and I'm probably going to get the pronunciation wrong here, Knickerbocker Trust. And as you can see again, this is a case of history repeating itself yet again. The primary causes for this was basically there was a lot of speculation. A lot of people lost confidence in the banks. And the reason for this was there was a new form of banks called trust banks, which were a financial intermediary that really functioned as a bank, but with only a fraction of the regulation. So, in other words, an unregulated financial market. Sounds familiar? There have been many other major banking panics in 1837, 1857, 1873, 1893, and 1907. And there have been minor panics in 1839, 1884, and 1890. So the reason I'm reading this is just to show you it's not an isolated incident. And as I said, this is the definition of madness. And look, a recession caused by a bank or financial institute are much worse for normal people because it will affect their day-to-day lives. And the economy needs to have a functioning financial system in order to operate effectively. Now, for ordinary people, it's really bad because if the bank goes bankrupt, they could lose their savings. It can cause a housing crisis, which is happening across the world. And if you want more information on this, you can check out a video I've done previously. The link is just below. It stops new businesses being created because they can't get business loans. A lot of old businesses will struggle as well, and some may go bankrupt. The reason is because it's nothing to do with them being a bad business. It's because simply they do not have the cash flow and they can't get the loan which they normally would. which then creates unemployment, which can turn a recession into a depression. Now, this is much worse than a recession that's caused by speculative investments, which will mostly affect investors, which are a small percentage of people. Obviously, it will affect people, but not as much as a recession caused by a bank. Now, we're never talking to someone on an event, and I don't know how this came about. We're just talking about banks. And I said, sure, every time banks become unregulated in America, they sooner or later have massive bank failure over there. And this person said, sure, the people working in banks, they're very smart. They know what they're doing. And when this person said it, I started thinking of the quote from the film The Big Short. Now, it's an excellent film. I would recommend you see it. During the film, one of the main characters is having a meeting with a regulator. And the regulator says, I'm sure the world's banks have more incentives than greed. And the main character says, you're wrong. And this is the reason why banks need to be regulated to stop this kind of behaviour. And you may be thinking, is there a solution to stop this risky behaviour from banks? And yes, there is. During the Great Recession in the 1930s, the Great Depression in the 2000s, the failure of private investment banks in 1873 crisis, and in 1907 panic, the Canadian banks during both periods were extremely stable. And the reason that they were stable was because of the way Canadian banks operates. And the reason for this is how banks in Canada are regulated. Canadian banks by law are prevented from engaging in the sort of risky behaviour seen elsewhere, especially in America. During both times in the Great Depression and Great Recession. Now, I have to point out that the Canadian economy was affected by both of these events. However, they had no banking failures at all when compared to the US, who had huge failures of banks both times during the Great Recession and Great Depression. So the big lesson here is banks need to be regulated to stop this risky behaviour. Now, for more than a century, the Canadian banking system has proven itself more stable than its US counterpart. So it would be worth looking at installing a similar banking system in Ireland and in other countries to stop this madness. As I said, the quote for madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Because otherwise, as I've shown, history will repeat itself and there will be another recession caused by an under-regulated financial system. And part of the reason I've made this video is just so people will know this information, because this information is very well known in economic circles, but the average person on the street doesn't know this. So thank you for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe and share this video just to let people know this information. And thank you for watching and see you next time.